being on the floor is so funny. Okay.
It's a casual conversation today. We're just kind of chilling on the
casual.
floor. Yeah, super casual. I love it. Hey guys, and welcome to Live Well and Yoga, a health and wellness podcast. I'm your host, Christine Jamal. I'm with my good friend, Sachil Bangalara. Sachil and I met through work. She's an amazing interior designer, friend, and hiking partner. It's been amazing to watch Sachil and her self-care journey. So that's what I want to chat with her today. Welcome to Live Well and Yoga, Sachil.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so happy to be here. It's been incredible getting to know you throughout the years and really focusing on living well. So I feel really honored to be sitting here with you today to talk about that.
I am so excited, and it's just, been amazing to watch your journey. And so I just want to chat about what you've experienced and what you've done to get to this point. Our conversations are usually about self-care and personal growth. And so, I love that we can connect on that level. And this mic is falling, but it's okay. So I want to chat, just your reflections from your self-care journey. And in our talks, we talk about alignment, and which is amazing to hear. Can you share, what does alignment mean to you? And, from your self-care journey, what are your reflections from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody said that alignment should be seen as a circle. I heard that recently, and it's really been my driving force when considering what truly aligns with who I am and my life and what I want that to look like. So ultimately, I see alignment for myself and my journey as a circle. And with that, I guess I would put it side by side with the things that I think about on the day-to-day. So if I'm thinking about my career, if I'm thinking about my relationships, my goals, I also make those circles, and I will really just analyze and see how it overlaps. Does it overlap at all? Is it completely aligned, or is it not even within the same radius? So that's definitely something that I've been focusing on. I think alignment looks different for everybody, depending on who you are, and really how you want to be seen in the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love those reflections. And, there's so many different branches of alignment in our lives. It hits in different areas. Did you see them hit equally, or was it just like a flow between the different areas?
At first, it was a complete mess. There was nothing really aligned about my life for a while, to be honest.
Well, that's how it works.
It's very true. But I think I needed to see that and change my perspective in order to really get on the right path. So I did notice a lot of things were aligned, and there were some things that I felt like I needed to let go of in order to feel like my life as a whole was aligned. There were certain things that I felt like I needed to lean into. I think that there was a discernment aspect to it as well. So it was a matter of me really assessing, do I want to flow into this particular aspect? Like, for example, going out. Go out to the bars with my friends and different things like that, and just be more social. And then once I kind of got to this journey of alignment and figuring out what I want, I realized I don't align with necessarily being social in that aspect. And there are other ways that I can promote being social and meeting people and enjoying my time with friends without feeling the need to put myself in environments that I don't align with. So it was also a aspect of just self-awareness, and really just filtering out what feels right.
I love those reflections and going back to where, there wasn't alignment. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, they really don't know where to start. It's almost like you have to hit a certain point of like non-alignment in order to recognize, okay, what actually aligns with me. And then I love the fact that you were open to like experiencing different social aspects of going out with friends. What made you realize, okay, this isn't where I align? How did you know what actually aligns with you? Just, was there inner work involved, or self-care practices, or how did you get to that feeling of like, wait, this doesn't align with me?
I think it's a great question, and that was probably the hardest question for me to answer. And it still is in a lot of ways. I think I've gotten better at it the more confident that I've become with my decisions and just trusting my intuition and what feels good. Um, I think that it's a matter of if you are continuously challenging yourself. So if there are aspects of yourself, characteristics that are making it difficult to fit in there, is it something that you're willing or wanting to change? Can you do that? If you can't, if you don't want to, then it's also just coming to the realization that it's just not for you then. So I think it took really assessing, do I want to change the things that I really enjoy doing? Do I want to continue to explore? And there's a point where if it just is not working, then we just move on. And I think letting go of what really is not meant to feel right with me and with what I want to do just helped with that. Because it is difficult to discern how far you want to push yourself because it's important to challenge, but there is a degree where you have to understand your limits and boundaries and find a new environment that will allow you to really bloom into who you are.
I really love those insights, and I think it takes, really getting to know yourself at an authentic level to understand what aligns with you because it's so easy to just go with the flow. And for you to take a step back and realize what actually aligns for yourself, I think that's so amazing because, I've seen the growth and it's been so amazing to watch because I see like the authentic version of you really blooming and shining through. So it's like taking that step back and in that journey, like you kind of lose a part of yourself and maybe even friendships or relationships. Did you find that you had to lose like an old version of you in order to become this? And how did that feel like?
Absolutely. I felt like it took, like, to speak to what you said earlier, like going backwards or really being not where you want to be. I don't want to say feeling low, but it kind of does take feeling low and not feeling like yourself to get you in the right mindset to reset. But I absolutely feel like I grieved almost a loss of myself or what I thought was myself because I just wasn't there yet. I lived for years in a version of myself that wasn't truly myself. And that was hard. And I think it's very confusing to accept that and to realize that you are kind of grieving and you have to just move on. But ultimately, it just unlocked a door that I never thought that would open for me, essentially. Just like you said, coming into my authentic self and really exploring that, it feels new. It feels almost like a rebirth. Not to be dramatic, but
No, it's awesome. I think that it really, yeah. There's like a transition of like becoming into a new version of yourself.
because that's ultimately what it was. It, even though for years you lived that way, it really wasn't who you are, and that's okay. I don't think that's ever really time wasted. I think it still took that to understand where you want to be.
We live in such a way like it becomes almost normal because we attach to this idea of who we are. And for so long, it's like this is who, even if it's uncomfortable or even if we're feeling something, we may not recognize a feeling of uncomfortableness just because this is just how we are. So, like, taking that, understanding that, wait a minute, this actually doesn't align with me. So going back to alignment, this doesn't align with me, you know, takes a lot of strength. And what kind of self-care practices or what things that have you done in your daily routine that changed in order to recognize what actually aligns with you?
I think the most important, though, is setting goals and standards for yourself on a day to day. So, for example, you have been a huge inspiration for me throughout the years. If I go into work one day and I hear that you've already gone on a walk, you had a yoga session, you've had your coffee, time to yourself, and it's only 9 a.m. I remember hearing that when I really wasn't at the best place and being like, how in the world can somebody find the energy to do that so early? She is glowing. She feels good. How do I get there? So that was a huge part of it, is finding things that you feel good about seeing. So helping with setting goals and figuring out what you want. For me, that was huge. Is really, you have to visualize what you want your life to look like, and you have to understand that it's not impossible, and there's no difference between you having that life besides yourself. You know, that's really the only thing that's stopping you. So, as cliche it is really true. And yeah, so I think just having a blueprint almost, and then really visualizing yourself in that blueprint as well.
Well, I'm so honored that, that I was a positive influence on you. Like, I didn't even realize that, and I feel like you also have been a positive influence on me. Like, I've fallen off track, and I'm like, wait a minute, Sachel is up at 6 o'clock or even 5 o'clock going on a hike. Like, I may be up, but I'm like in my PJs doing yoga. I mean, I just going outdoors at 5 o'clock. Maybe I'm even at 6. I'm like, wait a minute, how is she out there so early? So I love like the idea of, because you never know what role model we can be for others. So it's just finding those positive influences. Like, I love the idea of a blueprint or a vision of what your life could be, and really it's like just taking like the action steps to get there. And like you said, anything is possible. So in our talks, you've also mentioned reform. How has reform or reshaping your life, like, how has that been for you? What was your experience like?
I think reform can look also very different, and it's also something that can be attributed to a small detail, like waking up earlier, or it could be something larger, like letting go of attachments. For me, that was a huge part of it, is letting go of anything that I felt like really was beyond my control, and controlling the controllables essentially on a true day-to-day basis. I also think too, stepping into a very open mentality of really not victimizing myself or villainizing the world. I think a lot of times that happens where we are not where we want to be, and we focus on the things around us that are stopping us in our brains of getting there. So I think you have to really train yourself to realize that the world is really not against you, and you are in control of your life to a really high degree, actually. Of course, there are certain things that are beyond that you couldn't change if you, no matter how hard you tried. But I think by still continuing to be vulnerable and very optimistic and hopeful, it will only put you in that growth mindset and allow you to actually rewire your brain when everything around you is really not always beautiful. So I think that was a really, really big part of it, and focusing on a few ideas that really lean into more of self agency and just really taking control of your life.
I love that. It's like how we were speaking earlier, like, change, all this self-care, these self-care practices really stem around self-awareness, and being aware of our actions, and allowing clarity, opening up that mental space to allow yourself to change, and pretty much like reshape your life, and changing the things that you can change, like you said, like your morning routine. And share with us like a little bit about self agency. Like, how has your experience been with that, or what? Yeah, can you share or describe what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a kind of recent realization for me on self agency, and it essentially is the ability for one to take control of their life or decisions. And with that, it kind of ties into self-awareness and discipline, and really just being able to reshape the way that you think. And I've kind of boiled it down into a few key factors. The first is being creating and setting goals for yourself. So having a sense of responsibility over your life and really determining what you want things to look like. I think for years I had this mentality of flow, which I think is one of the most important things that you could really aspire for in your life. But I did it to the degree of almost having no goals and realizing that that will not really take you anywhere. You have to find a happy medium between letting go of control and not over controlling your life, because I think that that can also contribute to perfectionist tendencies, which I think can also be almost damaging in a way and take away your efforts. So you have to balance between control and then also just putting in effort and understanding that you won't be able to get everything there, but you have to have a driving force and a direction in order to move with the flow.
I love like this pretty like this deep understanding of like authenticity, of understanding yourself and self agency and flow. I love that idea of flow. Like it's so easy to go with the flow, and you may even think that you're doing things right, but going with the flow could lead to people pleasing, and like you said, like you're not really reaching goals or having standards for yourself. It Some people who go with the flow, and I've been there before too, it's almost like, hey, everything's cool. I'm just going to go with the flow. But really, when you take a step back, going with the flow, it's not your own flow. It could be someone else's flow. And so, creating a standard for yourself and taking accountability and responsibility, and like you said, discipline, and really honing in on going back to alignment, what aligns with you. So it is like a circle, like a full reflection of self-care practices, self-awareness, self-discipline, and it's just honing in and creating the standards and boundaries for you. So I love those insights. Like that's really like inspiring, and I mean, that's helped me. Like, I haven't even heard of that. Yeah. I love that.
I know, this is good.
I really love that insight because it really is an eye opener for like self-reflection and self-awareness. And it really, it allows you to like really reflect at yourself and what am I actually allowing into whatever it is, a relationship or even just to myself. So I love those insights. I think that's, it's very useful for me, but I'm sure to the people who are listening. So with all this, self-reflection and, the discipline, taking accountability, doing all this really allows us to see our self-worth and our value. Doing this, how do you see yourself? Like, I'm sure you've seen changes of your self-worth. Like, what was there a turning point of like, wait a minute, like, I'm worth more than I'm allowing myself to believe? Like, when did that come up for you? When did you experience that?
Oh, that was really huge. I feel like that is an evolving kind of mindset in terms of really just being confident. A huge part of that, I think, understanding your own self-worth is completely linked to being authentic and being your authentic self. And that is something that, obviously we're working towards every day. But for me, a huge turning point was learning to say no and challenging unrealistic standards. When it came to my outward interactions with other people and how that was linked to my self-worth, learning to say no was a huge part for me. And, touching on the going with the flow and feeling the need not to disturb, I think was a really big part for me. And I think understanding your boundaries really just helps, like you said, making sure that you are living for yourself and not for someone else's agenda. And then in terms of really challenging what could be considered an unrealistic standard. I think I had to assess the things that I was most harsh on myself about and ask if this was truly a realistic vision or expectation of myself. And if it wasn't, then letting it go, because perfection really is not necessary, or it's just not necessary for success. And it's not a true motivating factor. I think it's a very short lived feeling, because it really will never be met. So those were my two biggest things. It's a combination of surrounding myself with the right people, being able to have discipline in terms of how I interact with them, and also, like I said, turning inward and letting go of perfectionism, just trusting myself and my boundaries.
So you brought up the point of disruption and how you didn't want to disturb your surroundings. Like, can you give us an example, or can you explain more into what that means?
Absolutely. I think that it was in my brain. I thought I really don't want to disturb others. If I can enjoy whatever's happening in the moment and they can also enjoy it, then there's no need for me to set a boundary or say no to different things. If I can just observe and sit back, then I would have preferred to have done that. I still challenge myself not to do that all the time, even though that's where I feel most comfortable. So it could be as simple as that, like maybe sitting in a meeting and not speaking up about something that I thought of. That really isn't conflicting at all, or it's not going to cause any issues, but maybe it's just easier to not say anything. And then it goes into, maybe I didn't feel super comfortable with something that was said or done, or I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience. Would I ever say anything about it though? Probably not, ultimately, because I didn't find the need to. But I think that when it comes to truly wanting to surround yourself with the right people and put yourself in the right positions and move forward in your life, you have to be willing to do those things, or else you're not going to get into the environment that you want to be in. So that was really the best lesson, I guess I should say, that I had to learn. And then, of course, I think it comes almost from a selfish place of, if I don't disturb my surroundings, then my peace is not disturbed. Ultimately, we have to be thinking of ourselves and how to protect our peace. But I realized it was less about wanting to please others, and it still stemmed from making myself feel the most comfortable in that moment. And it wasn't helping me grow by not saying anything or not setting boundaries.
I love that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, just for example, whether it's like a friendship or conflict, or just sitting in a meeting and there's a discussion, and say that, people may say, does anyone have questions or anything to share? And I think a lot of people will just kind of sit back. We're not allowing ourselves that opportunity to grow when we hold our thoughts in. So I love that explanation of, like, not disrupting the peace, and we could actually see it in a different perspective. Like, we're not disrupting the surrounding, we're actually providing information that could help someone, that we could be a positive influence to that person. So it's like, that's really good insight to see things in a different perspective. So I love that. And I think with you know, personal growth, self care, I think perspectives change. Like we were saying earlier, how the universe works for us and truly not against us. And we could see challenges as opportunities to grow. So, how have you seen, like, what kind of things? Because our surroundings, I mean, unless we move or change, but some of our surroundings will always kind of be there. It's just how we perceive it. How have you now, how do you see different perspectives of things that you didn't see before, but now have come to surface?
Absolutely. That is a really great question. And I think important topic to discuss because perspective is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, we are always living in our own worlds, and all of our worlds look different, which is an exciting thing. I think I also learned too when you talk about perspective and just self awareness. The most important things for me through that journey, in terms of perspective, have been tuning into my emotions and really focusing on emotional resiliency in that sense and being able to handle setbacks with grace because I think your perspective can shift in a matter of a minute. I think if one thing goes wrong or not how you planned, it can completely shatter what you thought to be your world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think being able to tune into your emotions and be prepared for changes, really, it's important because it promotes the idea of flexibility and just an openness that I think is necessary
Mm-hmm.
because things are always changing and you have to choose to see things from a positive perspective. But it's really not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the moment, I think when we talk about how we're going to respond to things, we want to respond with intention and not impulse. And it requires you to just really be highly in tune with yourself all the time, like throughout the day, at every second. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like a lot, but I think it becomes easier the more that you practice it.
Mm-hmm. When we practice, yeah, like these behaviors or just actions or just self awareness, it becomes like a way of just thinking
Mm-hmm.
and just going back to like thinking positive. Yeah, our mind shift can change in a matter of seconds. And so, just thinking positive, is one thing, and but not having an expectation for
Mm-hmm.
something, not having an expectation because if it doesn't turn out the way we expected, we're letting ourselves down and just accepting things for what it is, but having that positive mindset, I think, is essential. And also, speaking of intention, I just living in that authentic place leads to doing things with intention. I think that is so important. And it all relates, like going with the flow, like, go with your own flow, go with your own intention. And it comes back full circle. It's just finding, those resources, being resilient and finding that awareness to really speak to what, going back to alignment, it all just stems back, going with what speaks your truth.
Mm-hmm.
So it really just all flows together. It's like not
Absolutely.
one thing or the other. It really all connects. And I think that's one of the more magical things about self-care. It just kind of unfolds in front of you, and it's just like the beauty of it. We don't know where it's going to end or where the corner is. It just
Mm-hmm.
all just folds like so beautifully. And I've seen you like just shine. Like I feel like you've always had the shine. I mean, we always have a shine. It's just unpeeling those layers and finding it and just connecting with our authentic self. So I think you've done like a beautiful job with it. Like it's just, like what's next? What's next? Because we're always, like you said, evolving, creating, growing. And even when we do have a checklist, we can go beyond that checklist
Mm-hmm.
because it's a continual process.
I love actually everything that you said, but I was so inspired by the idea of you saying to be know your resources, especially because I think a huge part of the journey for me too was learning to be resourceful. So
Mm-hmm.
not only see your resources, but be able to create them and come from a place of creation
Mm-hmm.
versus survival in that sense. You don't have to look for things, you really can be the one to create them,
Right.
which I think is really huge.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my guiding factor through a lot of this. And I think, too, when it's really easy to view the world one way and really just go full force into that,
Mm-hmm.
and it will help with the resourcefulness too.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to handling like setbacks with grace, just understanding that it really is a matter of choice.
And, people listening, they may think, well, I don't have the resources, but it's like just taking the steps and you become resourceful as you go along. And sometimes, I've been there where I've fallen off track. But it's like as you build, you have the resources behind you to get back on track. So yeah, I think, being resourceful is a key thing in like self growth and personal development, and getting those resources, we naturally obtain them through the process. It's not just we have the resources at hand right when we start.
Yes.
It's like it just unfolds for us as we give back to ourselves and take the steps. We become resourceful as we go.
Absolutely. I think if I reflect back onto like some of my hardest times pre growth mindset or even now, I can take now everything that I learned when I was at my lowest and everybody that I met, all of the experience that I had at that time, and transform it into a place of compassion and empathy that I would have never been able to have had I have not gone through it. So, in a sense, that is your resource too. Exactly what you said is going through the experiences. Now that you have that, you can understand and fully comprehend situations and people in a way that would have never been possible without it. And so it's really important too to just have some self-compassion throughout the journey and not be hard on yourself for ever having gone through something that you wish that you wouldn't have or wish that you would have done differently, because every experience really is an opportunity for growth. And I think converting your mindset from setback to opportunity is huge.
I think that's so important with like personal growth, and yeah, just seeing those challenges or setbacks as a way to redirect or to rebuild, finding, strength from that experience and just looking at it as an opportunity to grow. And, we're all on our own journey, and just having the compassion for ourselves, but also for others, and realizing that everyone else is also on their own journey. It's set to have compassion, but once you have compassion for yourself, like you'll allow that compassion for others. So I think it's just being kind to yourself, but also realizing everyone else is also on their own journey. Some people may see us and think, or see you and like, oh my gosh, like she's so lucky, like her life is great, like, which is beautiful, but it's like it takes work to get there, and so someone else could have that same experience. Like, it's not easy work, and I applaud you because some people like it's scary going through all the steps, and I'm like, for me, like, I'm sure like I've reached a certain point and like, okay, I'm going to turn my head, I'm going to turn my
Yeah.
head and take care of it later. But, for those who are starting on their self-care journey, it's like facing those fears, which may be uncomfortable, facing whatever emotions come from the growth process, because people are going to feel different emotions as they go along. And sometimes those emotions are scary to deal with or to even face. But, for the people listening, if you can just face them and understand why they're surfacing or why you're being triggered, and then, to understand, it gives you a better understanding of yourself. And once you understand, like, okay, I could actually disconnect from that emotion, and that's not truly me. Like, let me just understand why, and then I could disconnect from that. Did you experience that, like, with emotion surfacing and then realizing, wait a minute, this actually really isn't me. It's just a trigger from maybe a past experience.
Yes, definitely. I think for me, it was coming to an understanding of scarcity versus abundance. I think for years I heard the term abundance and it was like, okay, like what really does that mean and what does that look like? Because we hear it a lot. And scarcity mindset was a idea that really promoted anxiety for me. And if I questioned things it was coming always from a place of fear of not having that thing ever again. And if I didn't jump on the opportunity now, or if things were not working out the way that I thought that they should be, that would never happen for me again. And I had to really let that go and convert it when we talk about abundance, I think, to a place of a growth mindset. It really promotes the idea of evolution. And I think that we also have an understanding of what is for us really will happen. It's already in us. Um, and it's always going to be there. It's always going to re-arise in different ways. We're gonna, even if we have an experience that we don't want to end, we can always take the joy that we had from that for the rest of our lives. We will always have it. Um, so for me personally, letting go of fear was huge. And then also reframing to really promote the abundance mindset of I am deserving of this and it will happen for me again if this is not it. Um, that was huge for me.
I love that idea of like just taking the joy from the experience, the abundance of that experience versus seeing it as a loss. Like I think that's what a majority of us tend to do, that fear or that scarcity, like to see like I lost something, but really taking that situation and realize like, oh my gosh, like it wasn't a waste of time. Like I actually felt joy from this experience. So I love that, that mindset, that growth mindset. I feel like that's part of that positive thinking and just having that, that growth mindset, because we could look at something so negatively, but seeing it in a positive, it's like a game changer. It even changes like how, that the whole experience, seeing it in a more positive and abundant way. I love that,
Yeah,
that
I
thought
think
process.
it's important too to, it's very paralyzing almost when you're coming from a place of scarcity and it freezes you in that moment. So it doesn't even allow you to move forward because you're so concerned about what is not there or what is missing. But when you're converting, you have the idea of ever flowingness where it's almost like there are no limits to what you can think, all the good that will happen. It's huge. It's limiting versus expansion, and really just seeing things too as opportunities to be expansions of yourself and not just kind of an embellishment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Like I love that idea of expansion. Like people may see like an opportunity as just, if they see the downside of it, it's like having that growth mindset and seeing an opportunity as an expansion of your own personal growth. Like versus going back to protecting my peace. Like, wait a minute, I'm just not going to go there and I'm just going to protect my peace, but maybe taking an opportunity and seeing it as an opportunity to expand and to, like, again, having that growth mindset as it's part of the journey. It's part of the personal journey and the personal development. So I love that idea of expansion. I feel like it's like, I think a lot of people miss out on that perspective. And I think that's so beautiful of like seeing things and as an expansion to our own personal journeys. So I think that's just so beautiful. Share with us like, your self-care practices. How does like a day in Sachil's life look as far as like your morning routine or your evening routine, or what do you do to like self-care?
I think I am a creature of habit. I'll start there.
I think a lot of us are.
Right. And building those really strong routines has been huge for me in terms of having really great, joyful, peaceful days every single day. Um, for me in the morning, I really am pushing myself to wake up early. And it's not something I've always been great at, but it's something that I've really gotten a good hang of. I think having the morning time to have time to myself has been really big because everything is still so moving in the mornings,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the freshness of that. So waking up early has changed everything for me. It also gives me the opportunity to get things done sooner that I need to get done, whether that's going to the gym or reading or studying anything. I like having the time in the morning to do so. So starting my day off in that sense has been really good. And even if I do nothing in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
having an extra hour or two to myself sets the tone for
Mm-hmm.
everything. Um, Also, to giving myself enough time throughout the day to not feel overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
has been huge. Um, Having really strong, like, cleansing routines and just skincare in
Mm-hmm.
general. Really just focusing on acts that will take care of myself
Mm-hmm.
um, has been a really big part of making sure that I'm prepared for the day. And then to taking time at the end of the day to have a closeout almost
Mm-hmm.
where I can journal, which is huge, by the way. I think on
Mm-hmm.
this whole discussion, being able to track your progress is everything. I think that if you don't know where you've gone, if you don't have anything to compare, then it's really hard to see that because
Mm-hmm.
you're living in it every single day. So journaling at night has been huge. Taking time to read has also been really big because it's also so inspiring. And I love spending time on Pinterest too.
Mm-hmm. You've got me on Pinterest. I love making vision boards on
I'm
Pinterest.
a huge advocate for it. I think it's everything. And it also takes time away from being on social media
Mm-hmm.
because that's where all of our inspiration is. And
Mm-hmm.
even though it is kind of social, it's more focused on truly just visualizing. I love doing it for every month, just visualizing how I want the month to feel. And
Mm-hmm.
it could be very random, but I know that it's usually in tune with what I'm feeling and what I'm desiring to feel for that particular period. So it's been very helpful to kind of keep me away from the noise on social
Mm-hmm.
media too. It's really hard not to just doom scroll, but
Mm-hmm.
if you're doom scrolling on Pinterest, then at least it feels a little bit more
Yeah.
peaceful.
I'm on October, by the way.
October.
I love the monthly vision boards.
I love
You've
them.
inspired me for that. But I love all these self care practices you do. I'm working on my evening routine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a skincare routine, but yeah, it's like I love how you said early mornings. I do have a morning routine, and I also love how you said, some people may feel like they have to be doing something, but if you can just have a morning to do nothing, I think that's also self care,
Yeah.
just to sit in peace. And especially in the morning, like you said, it's quiet time, it's a little bit slower. I feel like it's a time when it feels like the world is asleep and you're the only one
Mm-hmm.
awake, where you can just be by yourself for a moment. For me, it's like it allows me to recognize that it's a new day and everything is going to be okay. It's like another reset for the day, and just to gain that clarity and that mental space for the day. So I love like your morning routine, and like also like you said, you give yourself some time even during throughout the day to have that mental space. I didn't even really think of that. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
a really good like perspective, and just a good thing to do, because throughout the day we could be so busy, but we also need to give ourselves that space. And then of course in the evening, just a time to close it off,
Mm-hmm.
to close off the day. I love like all that. Your journaling, I think that's a really good self-care practice, just to either vent or just to be creative,
Yes.
whatever it is. And like you said, if you write down about your day, you can look at it 6 months from now and compare, like, oh my gosh, like, and you can see the progression. So I love like that side by side, like the comparison of, you can actually
Mm-hmm.
see your growth. So I love all that you're doing. I see like the shine coming through you, and it's so magical to see. Um, you know, I want to thank you for being here on Live Well, and it's been so fun chatting with you.
Yes. Thank you so
Of
much.
course, and I hope you're okay sitting on the floor. This is such a casual convo, but I've enjoyed my time with you, and hopefully you can be on here again.
I would love to be.
Yeah.
This was so fun and comfortable. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Sachil, for being here, and I'm sure you can inspire so many people out there. You know, everything you've said has been so inspiring, but just so beautiful to hear, and you speak of it so eloquently. You know?
Oh,
So thank you again for being on here, and I love you so much.
oh, I love you, Christine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, this is so fun.